document be noted, and I call the member for Menzies.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Can I begin by thanking the members who have spoken before me, in particular the member for Spence. Your very generous acknowledgement of all of the other veterans in the Parliament. I didn't realise it was actually 21, so you've done your homework, so thank you for that. And then also in particular the member for Braddon who spoke just before me. Like a lot of us, you know, we all come in here with talking points, but sometimes the best contributions are straight from the heart, and he delivered it straight from the heart. And a rabbi, I'm not Jewish, but a rabbi spoke to me recently when I was at an award that's given in the name of a Jewish Australian soldier who died, and there's an award given to Jewish schools in his name. And he said, if you speak from the heart, you'll connect to the heart. And I often think of that, and we see those moments in the chamber and in other places. There's something about that connection that connects us as humans. I am a veteran. It's not a badge I wear too often or even know what it means. And I don't, when I read the interim report, and I've read it twice, a lot of it's not familiar to me because we all have different experiences, and I was very fortunate. And unlike the member for Braddon, I haven't carried burdens from there, and that's often just the accident of the way your tours went and just the circumstances of life. I think another factor is I was also fortunate that I didn't start off as a regular soldier like he did and many others did. I started off like the member for Spence did, as a reservist. And I think, not for me to replace the findings of the Royal Commission, but one of the advantages of starting as a reservist, and then I went full-time, and then I went back to reservist, you sort of have a foot in both worlds, and you go from conflict and combat overseas to putting the bins out very quickly, and it's something that feels normal to us, but it's probably not normal to someone who signs up as an 18 or 19-year-old and have this intense experience for many years, and then they're putting the bins out and getting yelled at by their partner, and the bills are coming in, and there's other pressures on life. That's really hard. And I had a taste of that on my second tour of Afghanistan. When I came back, I remember as I was a platoon commander, we were in quite heavy contact in Kandahar province on a Thursday, and we came back that night on a Friday. I was on a plane from Tarin Kowt to Kandahar, 3 hours later from Kandahar to Al Minhad, 6 hours later to Darwin, how many hours it takes to Sydney, then to Melbourne. And each time you went to an airport, you lost more of your friends as they went to their own places. And you go from a platoon of 30 and all the support staff, there was 80 of us outside the wire. And I remember walking out through that gate at Melbourne Airport on my own. And I was so excited to see my wife and my then 2-year-old boy, and my wife was pregnant with our daughter. But I had this sense of loss that I went from this family of 8, as the member for Braddon spoke about, to my core family. And I thought he said it beautifully, that it is about family, and it's about the transition from one family to the other. And I had that sense of grief, and then many others will know who've been to the bar. I went to the bar readers course on the following Monday, and that one world that became normal to me and I had a sense of comfort about, and then I went into another world that I had felt abnormal to me. Your fear becomes relative, and so my heart rate went up when we were doing practice moots and you had judges asking you questions. I had to go lie down from it because the human condition is that we're more resilient than we think, and we are a product of our experience. So something that's quite abnormal becomes normal very quickly. And that's what we do to 18 and 19-year-olds. We take them from their families, and they're just kids, and we shape them into soldiers and officers who are ready to do extraordinary things, to turn your back to gunfire because it might be coming from this direction, knowing that the person next to you has your back. There's nothing like that. There's nothing like that. I reflect on the experience of many others that I served with. I won't name him, but there's a very good friend of mine who had some horrible experiences overseas. He's a wonderful person, but on his tour there were civilian casualties. Babies and children were killed for decisions that he made. And he was ultimately had a charge placed against him in negligence, which was the first time that was brought in a combat scenario. And I was his barrister defending him. And it was where those two worlds crossed in a way that I didn't expect. The charges were ultimately dismissed. But I often reflect on how do you go on when he was the person who made the decision and then had to carry those dead children out. And then your country tells you, well, I think you're criminally liable for that. And then you are acquitted. Yet he goes to work every day as a mechanic because he doesn't want people to pity him or feel sorry for him. And again, the member for Braddon summarised that so well. We often think of the cliche of the broken veteran, and so many are, and we've got to look after them. But there's a lot that just want to get on with life, even in the worst of circumstances. So I often think of him when people say, oh, were you busy today? You've worked hard as an MP. I was thinking, well, I don't get up at 5 a.m. and look up at oily cars dripping down in my face and trying to solve problems like that. And he does it 6 days a week, and he's a wonderful person and served this country with distinction. But there were some really good recommendations in this report, and it's driven by the evidence that has been given by veterans who have had a personal experience, many similar to that, and many who it's more the transition from that life of service and purpose to a normal life, which has its own challenges. And I particularly like the recommendations about making the process simpler. No one likes filling in forms. No one likes red tape. That's supposed to be an article of faith of our party, and I'm really pleased to see that that's a recommendation that the government is supporting. Of course, we should make this process simpler to get help. And in the final few minutes, I want to address some of the recommendations that it seems the government hasn't accepted, and again, we support you on that, which were the recommendations around parliamentary privilege and public interest immunity. The Attorney-General said in an interview, I think it was at the press club when he was asked about that, he said he was baffled by those recommendations. And I was too. Our veterans put their life on the line, not only to fight for their friends and their family and their country, but also some of the great traditions of our democracy and the rule of law. And parliamentary privilege and public interest immunity, whilst they can be abused, are key institutions of our democracy and the rule of law. And I think the Commission, with respect, overreached in asking for royal commissions to be able to abrogate parliamentary privilege and public interest immunity. And the Parliament has just signed off on a corruption commission, and we welcome that and we supported it. But that commission will have authority over all of our ADF members, and there's enormous powers given to that commission. And it may be in the future, if someone abuses that process, they can come here and come to their member and get their voices heard. So parliamentary privilege is very important to our job. It should never be abrogated, and it wouldn't be in the interests of veterans or anyone to do that. So again, I commend the government for holding firm on that. It's very easy to say when you get a Royal Commission recommendations, we'll implement them all. That's very easy. But in the end, they are recommendations, and the responsibility is on all of us to do the right thing by veterans, by our communities, and by our democracy. So thank you, Deputy Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to this, and thank you again to the members for Spence, Braddon, and everyone else who spoke.